Hey there. You know how workplace stress is no joke, right? We're diving into your stack of sources on mindfulness-based programs, those MBPs everyone's buzzing about, to see if they live up to the hype. You've got research papers, articles, even a peek at the market trends. Clearly, you're looking for the no-nonsense breakdown on whether these programs actually work.
You've come to the right place. What's fascinating is how companies from Google to Aetna are investing in mindfulness, but your notes on the potential drawbacks, that's where it gets really interesting.
Okay, so let's unpack this. First things first, what exactly are MBPs? I'm guessing it's more than just telling employees to be mindful and calling it a day.
You're right. It's far more structured than that. Think of MBPs as training programs incorporating formal practices like meditation alongside discussions and psychoeducation.
So more like a workshop than just a meditation app.
Exactly. Two big names you'll see are mindfulness-based stress reduction, or MBSR, and mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, MBCT. Some programs even weave in yoga, showing you how multifaceted this approach can be.
That makes sense. It's about giving people a toolkit, not a one-size-fits-all solution. And that market report snippet you sent, MBPs are booming, but do they live up to the hype?
This large-scale meta-analysis we have here analyzed a ton of workplace MBP studies. The findings, pretty convincing. MBPs can significantly reduce stress and burnout. We're talking measurable improvements, not just people saying they feel better.
Less stressed employees? That's a win for everyone. But you mentioned in your notes wondering about the bottom line too, right? Do companies see better productivity or just happier people?
That's where it gets intriguing. While job satisfaction consistently goes up, the link to productivity is trickier. Some studies show a clear improvement, others not so much. It's like there are other factors at play, which makes sense given your line of work where data analysis and strategic planning are key. Mindfulness might boost focus, but those complex projects, they often need more than just a clear mind.
So what you're saying is context matters a lot time.
Yeah.
What about the employees themselves? Do certain personalities benefit more from this?
That's a question researchers are digging into. One study we found looked at participant data from several trials, and surprisingly, things like initial stress levels, age, even prior experience with mindfulness didn't drastically change how effective the program was at reducing stress.
Now that's a real head-scratcher. You'd think someone already into meditation would have a leg up.
Right. But this highlights how complex this field is, and we need more research to fully grasp those individual responses. What we do know is stress reduction is just the tip of the iceberg.
Okay, so beyond feeling calmer, how does mindfulness actually translate into skills that matter in today's workplace? You know, those things that help you thrive, not just survive.
That's where MBPs get really interesting. Beyond stress, mindfulness boosts self-awareness and emotional regulation, which are pure gold in demanding work environments. Think about it. People more in tune with their own emotions, navigating tricky conversations and high-pressure situations with more grace. That's valuable.
It's like giving your emotional intelligence a power-up. Do you have any examples of companies actually doing this well?
Absolutely. Aetna, the insurance giant, went all in, offering mindfulness training to over 13,000 employees.
That's commitment. What were the results like?
Impressive. They saw a 28% drop in stress levels and even estimated each employee gained about $3,000 in productivity annually.
$3,000 per employee. Now that's a number I understand. What was their secret?
It wasn't about throwing money at the problem. They were smart. Aetna introduced mindfulness gradually, starting small, think short meditations during executive meetings, then expanding to offer yoga and meditation classes company-wide. They created a culture where mindfulness was valued, not forced.
So it's not just about the program itself, it's about how it's woven into the company's DNA. Did they mention any pushback from employees? I mean, squeezing in one more thing?
That's where leadership buy-in was crucial for Aetna. It wasn't an HR checkbox, it came from the top down. When leaders walk the talk, it sends a powerful message.
It's like anything else in a company. If the higher-ups don't value it, why should anyone else, right?
Right.
But let's be real, people are slammed. How do you fit mindfulness into an already packed workday?
A challenge for sure. Many companies find success with flexible options, shorter sessions, online resources, even weaving mindfulness practices into existing meetings or breaks.
Instead of adding another meeting, they're making mindfulness part of the flow. So much less intimidating that way. But what about the elephant in the room, the potential stigma?
You've hit on a valid concern. Some might feel awkward, worried about seeming weak. Open communication and clear messaging from leadership are key.
Creating that safe space where it's not about judgment, but about giving everyone the tools to thrive. Any other challenges companies should watch out for with MBPs?
One thing to remember is that simply offering a program won't magically change everything overnight. A company's culture, values, those existing structures, they all play a part in whether mindfulness truly takes root.
It's about setting the stage for mindfulness to flourish, not just dropping it in and hoping for the best. You mentioned collective intelligence earlier. How does that tie into all of this?
Imagine a team where everyone is not just individually skilled, but deeply connected, empathetic, tapping into a shared understanding. That's collective intelligence. Solving complex problems, achieving goals impossible alone.
So the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. But how do you cultivate that kind of synergy?
This is where it gets really exciting. Some experts believe mindfulness is crucial because it nurtures those qualities essential for collective intelligence. Psychological safety, trust, emotional awareness, and deep listening. When you have these elements, amazing things happen.
This is where things get really interesting for me. We often hear about the amazing benefits of mindfulness, but are there any potential downsides to bringing it into the workplace?
That's a great point. While MBPs can be incredibly valuable, they're not a magical cure-all. And like any powerful tool, their implementation within a company requires careful consideration.
So let's talk about those considerations. What are some things companies and employees should be aware of?
One concern is the potential for misuse. For instance, what if a company uses mindfulness training to push employees to work harder and longer under the guise of stress reduction?
That seems counterproductive to what mindfulness is all about. It's like saying, meditate so you can handle even more.
Exactly. It's crucial to be mindful of how these programs are framed. Is it truly about employee well-being? Or is it about subtly enhancing performance without addressing underlying issues?
That makes a lot of sense. Ideally, mindfulness should empower employees to set healthy boundaries and advocate for their well-being, even if it means saying no sometimes.
Yeah.
That might not always align with what the company wants.
Absolutely. It's about finding that balance between individual needs and organizational goals. And that brings us to another potential pitfall. Could mindfulness become just another pressure point for employees? Another box to tick on a performance review?
You know, it's almost funny, the push for wellness becoming another source of stress. Oh, great, now I have to be mindful too.
It's a valid concern. That's why transparency from leadership is key. Mindfulness should be offered as a resource, not a mandate. And employees should feel empowered to choose whether it's right for them.
Choice and autonomy are so important. It shouldn't be just another item on a corporate checklist. But let's zoom out a bit. We've talked about individuals and organizations, but what about the bigger picture? Does mindfulness in the workplace have any ripple effects on society as a whole?
Now, that's a fascinating question. Researchers are starting to explore this idea, suggesting that as workplace mindfulness becomes more common, it could contribute to a broader shift in values, more awareness, compassion, and ethical decision-making.
So like that ripple effect we talked about earlier, but on a much larger scale. That's a pretty amazing thought.
Precisely. Imagine a world where businesses are as focused on their impact on employees, communities, and the environment as they are on profits.
Conscious capitalism, fueled by mindfulness. I like it. But are there any real-world examples of this happening right now?
We're already seeing some promising developments, particularly in corporate social responsibility. Think of companies like Patagonia and Ben & Jerry's, known for their ethical and sustainable practices.
They've always stood for something beyond just selling a product. But how does mindfulness tie in?
It's about creating a company culture of awareness and compassion that goes beyond the office walls. When employees develop their mindfulness skills, they may become more attuned to the needs of others and more likely to get involved in positive social change.
So it's about bringing that same mindfulness to how you interact with the world around you.
That's pretty powerful.
Absolutely. And that brings us to some key takeaways for you. If you're thinking about implementing mindfulness in your own workplace, remember that context is everything. What works for Google might not work for a small startup.
Don't just try to copy someone else's program. It's about finding what resonates with your team and your company culture.
Exactly. And don't forget those ethical considerations we talked about. Ensure that mindfulness is a resource for employees, not a tool for control or exploitation. It's about empowering individuals, not adding pressure, and creating a space where mindfulness can thrive organically. Are there any resources you recommend for those of us eager to learn more?
Absolutely. There are some fantastic books and online resources available that delve deeper into the practicalities and philosophy of mindfulness. And there are even organizations dedicated to bringing mindfulness to the workplace in ethical and effective ways.
That's fantastic. So for someone like you who's clearly interested in exploring this further, so we've talked about the benefits, the challenges, and even dipped our toes into the potential ripple effects of mindfulness in the workplace. But before we wrap up, I'm really curious about something you mentioned earlier, something about potential downsides.
It's definitely something to consider. While mindfulness can be a powerful tool for good, like any tool, it can be misused.
Okay, now you've got me worried. What kind of misuse are we talking about here?
Well, think about it. Could there be situations where instead of empowering employees, mindfulness is used to make them more compliant, more accepting of difficult working conditions, or less likely to rock the boat?
So instead of addressing the root causes of workplace stress, it's more like putting a Band-Aid on them.
Exactly, and that's a real concern. It's crucial to be aware of this potential pitfall and to make sure that mindfulness initiatives are truly aligned with ethical values.
It makes a lot of sense. It's like anything else, good intentions can sometimes have unintended consequences.
Exactly, and that's why it's so important to keep asking questions, to be critical, and to make sure that mindfulness is being implemented in a way that benefits everyone.
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. I feel like I have a much better understanding of not just what mindfulness is, but also its potential and its pitfalls in the workplace. Any final thoughts for our listeners before we sign off?
Just this. As you explore mindfulness, whether for yourself or for your company, remember to stay curious, stay engaged, and stay true to the values of awareness, compassion, and ethical action.
Perfectly said. It's been a pleasure diving into this with you.
The pleasure was all mine.
And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep learning.
Thank you for watching and listening. We hope you found your inner peace with our podcast. Keep yourself updated and join us on our next episode. Stay safe and healthy, and have a good day. See you soon.